How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here, and today's video is going to be on capping and why you shouldn't cap, when you shouldn't cap, when you should cap, and basically what you should be using the cap circle for. I find a lot of people are hindering their own game, their own win rate, just by capping. And we're going to discuss kind of why that is and when you should actually be using the cap circle. So, at the end of the game, when it's 9 versus 1, the worst thing you want to be doing is capping because, you can get some extra damage. You'll get more XP if you take out the whole of the enemy team. I find a lot of teams will cap within the first, 2, 3, 4 minutes of the game where everyone YOLOs into the cap circle and it's a battle of who can cap first. Half the enemy team is still alive and you're just left with a very sour taste in your mouth where you only get 400 XP for actually winning the game. You can get so much more XP and you'll actually progress faster towards the tanks that you're aiming to get towards. You'll be able to put pressure on the opponents when you can get round both flanks, especially when you're in a position where you can cap, because if you're in the enemy base you then put pressure on the opponent's team to get back to their own cap, at which point you can defend it. Just having that point there where you can basically defend their cap, basically, because they're going to have to come back, they're going to be rushing, you're going to be able to take advantage of that, and you're going to be able to push out more damage than you would have done if you just capped on its own. Obviously there's scenarios where capping is the only way you will win that game. Depending on whether you're going for your marks percentage will depend on whether you want to actually cap or not, or win the game. Because obviously if you're going for marks purely, necessarily winning the game isn't always your priority. It will be just getting damage. I know a lot of teams and teammates that I know decide not to cap just because they want more damage and more assisted, and therefore they'll increase their marks percentage faster, because obviously the marks of excellence don't really count winning the game. So yeah, you're better off actually just getting damage and assistance instead. Now, what do I think is actually really good in terms of not capping? So obviously we can boost up that damage total that you can get. You can boost up your assisted, you can get more kills. What happens with getting more kills, getting more damage and getting more assisted? It basically boosts the overall XP that you will earn on your tanks. It will boost your win rate, it will boost your damage caused / received. It does a whole host of other things that if you just capped it wouldn't have done. Often the key thing is that you will actually get to the tank that you want faster if you manage to win the game without capping. So I'm not saying that you should never cap. What I'm saying is that in a scenario where you're in a fast medium, a fast light tank, why are you still sitting in the cap when there's 3 tanks against 15? When you have a massive victory, why wouldn't you want to get more damage? Why wouldn't you want to secure the victory in a way where you feel it's actually accomplished, to the point where it's not really a win if there's still enemy tanks on the team still alive? That's how I kind of view it. Obviously you can take it in a different way. If you are purely just about win rate, then that's the way to go. But often, a lot of the times, if you just get in the cap, the teammates that you do have that lack the support will eventually just get faded away, and then they'll come for you, especially on maps where the cap time is really big. So capping is definitely not the way, and then you end up getting swamped by the enemy team and you just lose anyway. So it's knowing when to judge when you should be pushing and when you shouldn't be. But that's something you need to keep in mind. I've got some gameplay on the screen. Obviously it's not really related, but it's just a good gameplay for you to watch whilst I talk about this. What kind of scenarios do you want to actually cap in then? Well, it's scenarios where you're the team that are getting pushed, you're the team that have lost the majority of the tanks. If it's really outweighted and you just want to win the game, then that's a good time to cap. But when you see that your team is winning quite considerably, capping is one of the kind of things that both annoys your team members as well as hinders your own gameplay, because you would have won the game anyway, you would have got more damage and you'll be doing better overall. You'll get a better game, you'll learn the game more because you're actually spending time playing against other enemy tanks, learning where the weak spots are. For a newer player, definitely capping is actually one of the things that hinders you, even though you think that you're helping your team. it both negatively impacts you and your team members as well. Definitely if you're going for marks, you'd never really want to be capping, in my personal opinion, unless it really is like a case of you'll just get swamped anyway if you leave the cap. So yeah, and you just want to win. So what do I actually think then overall? I think you need to kind of make sure that you don't cap all of the time. It shouldn't be the thing that you're focusing on in a game. It shouldn't be the one thing that, yeah, it's a standard battle, yeah, you have to cap. Obviously, if it's the assault mode, obviously if you're on the offensive side, then you need to be pushing that and pushing towards the cap. But a lot of the time you don't win assault by actually capping anyway, because the cap time is so large and the majority of their team are going to be defending it. So overall, I think the moral of the story is really, if you want to be having better games and actually improve the fastest, have longer games where you will still win, then not capping in those scenarios will definitely help. But obviously, if you need to cap and it's definitely you're going to be on a loss, then definitely don't. If it's a swamping victory and you're still capping, I genuinely don't know what you're doing. It's only hindering you. Often, if I will use the cap circle, it's actually to attract the attention of the enemies as well, to be able to bring them back to their own base, and then I can cut them off in different positions, alert my presence in their cap circle for them to kind of think, right, they're going to come back to the circle, and then I reposition myself to be able to get a crossfire as they go back to the cap where I was. So yeah, it's good for using it as an additional tool to kind of alert the enemy to come back to the base, but then actually take them out from a different area. So maps that are good for that are stuff like Kasserine, and you've got other maps like the bigger maps. Just basically be careful as well, because it does alert the enemy team when you get into the cap circle, which is really, really a big problem in terms of, I find a lot of people will drive through the cap. You always, if you don't want to get detected or you don't want the enemy to know where you are, you want to be sneaky, going through the cap circle is the worst thing you can do. Even if you just touch into the cap circle, it alerts the enemy team saying the opponents are capturing your base. That's something you don't want to do, so avoid the cap circle in that regard if you're trying to be sneaky and get around behind the enemies in kind of like a pincer maneuver. If you've got teammates and you're confident with them, then definitely don't go in the cap, because you can defend the cap circle very well. A lot of the cap circles have defensive positions where you can set up a crossfire, so instead of actually capping, you can actually set up a really good defensive position around it. Maybe pressure them by getting in the cap circle real quickly, and then they'll start coming towards the cap circle and then defend it from there. I don't want you guys to take this as a rant video, because it really isn't. I'm just seeing that a lot of people are actually having hindered games just because of the cap circles, and it's kind of, it must be not enjoyable to cap, is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's far more enjoyable, far more satisfying when you actually fully take out the entire enemy team, where there's no one left alive, where you feel that it's an actual victory and not just a kind of a false victory where, yeah, you've won, but there's still more tanks left alive. Then yeah, I just think that's kind of something I wanted to talk about. Obviously, I'm not the best player to kind of talk about, because I genuinely have one of the lowest capture bases probably going. I don't know if I'll put a thing on screen of my actual capture percentage, but I think I've only actually got 2 invader medals out of 20-something thousand games. Yeah, I kind of call this thing the golden ratio, and it's basically where you've got defender medals and you've also got invader medals, and it's kind of, if you want a good golden ratio, then you want to have way more defenders than invaders, because that basically is my kind of judge of whether you're a kind of good player. I don't know how to say it in any other words, because basically if you cap a lot of the time, that's because you don't understand that it's actually better to get out of the cap circle, and often a lot of players that have highest cap think that they're going to increase their win rate, but then they actually have lower win rates than players that might not cap. So I think that comes with game knowledge, and I think videos informing you on decision making because that's what this game really relies on. It's about decision making, knowing when to move and when to get out of there, when to use certain aspects of the game, like the cap circle, jumping into it, to actually be able to draw the enemies in and then take them out that way instead of actually winning by cap. Because everyone wants that game where you get a pools medal, where you get 10 kills, where you have 9, 10,000 damage, but that's not going to happen if you jump in the cap straight away and win that way. So if that's what your goal is, or if your goal is to just improve in general, just learn the game more, then you want to be actually fighting tanks. You don't want to be jumping in the cap circle with 10 other tanks. Yeah, it's not worth it. Other than that, I hope that you guys kind of understood where I was coming across. It's not from a ranty perspective. I was just trying to let you know why you should cap, when you shouldn't cap, and kind of what the cap circle should be used for, in order to actually win and kind of maximise your damage, maximise your kills, maximise basically everything in game, to be able to have a better game in overall. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy. If you want to check out some other videos on screen, I should have a guide to the crew skills up on screen right now, and then my recent video, whatever that may be at the time that you watch this video. Other than that, I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.